Our economy is based on the buying and selling of stuff. We want places to buy stuff, places to use stuff, places to store stuff. Moving your stuff, this time on Science Without Walls. Welcome to Part 6, the final part of Science Without Walls. In these final 5 programs, we connect, apply much of what we've covered and learned to you, to your world. First, your stuff, especially your car. Then your luck, or lack of it maybe, your health, then your creativity, and finally, your responsibilities. First, your stuff. Our economy is mainly based on the manufacture, distribution, and acquisition of material goods, consumer products, and services. We live in the most consumer-oriented, materials-based society in the history of the planet. Our stuff is made of matter, of the elemental stuff in the periodic table. It takes energy to make stuff, and energy to use it, and energy to move it. So the basic principles of physics, of chemistry, and of biology apply to all of our personal stuff. For most of us, the major single piece of stuff we have, with the possible exception of a home, is a car. Cars are big, heavy, expensive, require maintenance, gasoline, insurance. The cost of a car tends to scale with its mass and size, which isn't too surprising because mass costs money. Mass is stuff. It takes resources to construct it, and those resources have to be mined or grown, refined and purified or synthesized, and processed and constructed to become the various parts of our automobile. Cars run from small and light to large and massive. They range from being relatively inexpensive, although it's hard to get a new car in the United States anymore for anything less than maybe $8,000. And they can easily exceed $40,000. They can, of course, even go much higher. Cars can be noisy or quiet, open or closed, high clearance or low clearance, large wheelbase and a large turning radius, or small wheelbase and a smaller, tighter turning radius. The laws of physics obviously apply, especially potential energy and center of gravity. The lower a car is to the ground, the more stable it is. The higher it is from the ground, of course, the more clearance there is, but obviously the less stable it is. The wider and further apart the wheels, generally the more stable, and of course, the less maneuverable. The sleeker the car, generally the less wind resistance, the more economical it is, particularly at higher speeds. All of these factors relate to fuel economy. The lighter a car, the less mass to move around, the more economical. The lower it is to the ground, generally the less wind resistance, the more economical. The greater the number and size of cylinders, the more total gasoline burned, the less economical. And generally, the greater the acceleration capacity, which scales with the number and size of the cylinders, the lower the economy. Let's assume your car gets 20 miles per gallon, and you're driving on the local interstate at 50 miles an hour. If you drive for 1 hour, how much energy is being consumed? Well, if we do a fast estimate, we find about 300 million joules during that hour, or roughly 100,000 joules per second. Since 1 joule per second is 1 watt, our unit of power, your cruising car uses 100,000 watts, or 100 kilowatts. That's a very large amount of power. That's the electrical power equivalent of 1,100 watt bulbs. Another way to look at it, it's the same as the average power consumption of 100 households. And that's assuming the car was cruising, not accelerating. If it were accelerating, the gasoline consumption would increase by up to 5 times. Now, obviously, all of that energy isn't being used in moving your car and the stuff within it. Remember our laws of thermodynamics. You can't get something for nothing, and you can't even break even. This shows how the energy is actually being distributed. Look at the bottom third of the diagram. Less than 1/3 of the energy actually goes to doing real work, to moving the motor. The rest is dissipated as heat through the radiator and out of the tailpipe. It's interesting that the energy used to actually move the car is only about 25% of the total. And only a little more than half of that actually goes to overcoming air resistance and rolling or tire resistance. The energy used to run your air conditioner is often comparable to the amount used to move the tires along the road. So every time you turn that air conditioner on, you significantly decrease your fuel economy. So your 20 mile per gallon car easily becomes a 12 to 15 mile per gallon car. There seems to be a growing habit in at least parts of Salt Lake City of leaving the motor running, often with the air conditioner on, when the driver runs in to make a quick purchase. The energy situation is almost as bad with the car idling as it is with the car moving, since most of the energy burned is wasted whether the car is moving or not. Of course, if it's not moving and the air conditioning is on for no good reason, then even more energy is being wasted. Turn off your engines and turn off your air conditioners. A typical compact or subcompact car, which might cost in the range of $8,000 to $15,000, weighs in the range of 2,000 to more than 3,000 pounds. The car's function is to move 1.2 people during any average vehicle trip. Most cars are solitary people movers. The weight of the driver is negligible, roughly only 5 to 10% of the total weight. Most of the chemical energy the engine is transforming is being used to move my car, not to move me or even my stuff. My weight and the weight of my stuff in a normal commuting trip is less than 10% of the total weight of the car plus driver plus stuff system. So all of this money we spend on gasoline, on maintenance, and on insurance is not really being used to move you or me around. It's being used to move our car. In a sense, your conclusion in the alien starship encounter was correct. In our society, the main life form appears to be the automobile. You and I could be viewed from the perspective of that distant solar system and some sort of extraterrestrial scientist as a little organism that gets in and out of the automobile. The movement of stuff by cars is incredibly inefficient. What you pay for and what you want in owning a car is not efficiency or economy. It's convenience and comfort. It's comforting to be able to climb into a car at any instant and go almost anywhere without waiting, without asking for permission, without concern for the weather, with little concern about where we store our stuff once we get to our destination. We simply lock it in the car. Without having to be jostled, annoyed, without having to suffer loud and uncomfortable noises, and without have to worry about missing our bus. We are a convenience-oriented society, and our individual automobiles are the most expensive manifestation of that quest for greater and greater convenience. Most of us require less than 4 square feet of surface area, standing or walking, 20 square feet or so on a bicycle or maybe motorcycle, and about 150 square feet with a typical car. Although each car occupies about 150 square feet or so, the average space per car in a parking lot or in total gridlock on Interstate 15 is probably closer to 300 square feet. And on the highway, assuming reasonable car length figures for safety, perhaps 500 to 1,000 square feet or more. Cars take space on the highway, in parking lots, in garages. It's cars, our ownership of them, and the convenience they provide, which is largely responsible for the high percentage of our land area devoted to asphalt and concrete, even on our university campus. Cars require resources. They require gasoline, produced in refineries from oil pumped from wells. They produce carbon dioxide and a variety of other emissions which contribute to air and water pollution. The typical car owner and user is often unaware of just how much pollution and air degradation is caused by his or her automobile inaction. The only time we really become aware of it is when there is a traffic jam in some area where the air is not well mixed, as in an underground parking garage. If you're trying to breathe that air, you very quickly realize the degradation in air quality caused by cars whose engines are running. It's actually been suggested that when people buy a car, they should be asked to drive it into a small, closed test room, sit at the wheel with the windows down and the engine running, and try to breathe. They would then very quickly realize the environmental damage caused by a large vehicle with low fuel economy. Don't try this, as it can really be lethal. The major contributor to air pollution in most urban areas today is not industry. It's not buses or trucks. It is automobiles, yours and mine. The daily levels of autopollutant gases generally increase with the morning commute and drop after the late afternoon commute. The catalytic converters in the emission system of your car, assuming they're functioning properly, do significantly reduce much of the harmful emissions. Catalysts decrease the activation energy for various reactions, enhancing the oxidation of unburned fuel and carbon monoxide to CO2 and water. Automobile catalysts include palladium, platinum, and the rhodium metals, because these elements have very unique surface properties which facilitate the binding of carbon compounds and their oxidation at low temperature. Catalysts do significantly reduce carbon monoxide and hydrocarbon emissions, as much as 90%. They also reduce other emissions. Ozone is very reactive. We don't want it down here in the air that you and I breathe, although we do want it up in the stratosphere to absorb the ultraviolet coming in from the sun. Down here, it's dangerous. Up there, it's very beneficial. And up there, it's normally produced, as long as there aren't man-made chemicals which serve to destroy it. Down here, we just as soon it not be produced or get rid of it if it is. New catalyst technologies may enable you to get rid of ozone while riding the bus or even driving your car. But this is just an idea. It hasn't yet been developed or tested. New technologies can be very useful and must be continually developed and applied to help solve these problems. But new technologies by themselves cannot solve all the problems. They're just part of a mix of solutions to these very complex issues. Air pollution is a major and growing problem as the numbers of people and numbers of cars increase in urban areas. It is true that if you burn natural gas instead of gasoline, your pollution is lower, although you're still producing a lot of CO2. It is also true that if you use an electric vehicle, which is likely to start soon, especially in California, and is already here for some specialty purposes, the emissions from your vehicle are reduced to nearly zero. Of course, you have to recall that the electricity needed to recharge the batteries of the electric car is generated back at the power plant, and that process is very inefficient, although it's more efficient than your gasoline-powered car. The real difference is in economy of scale. The large electric generating plant will have far more effective pollution control equipment than you could ever afford for your individual automobile. So with electric cars, the pollution is concentrated at one source, at the power plant, and can be more effectively and efficiently handled there. There are some other aspects of efficiency that we should consider. The fuel efficiencies of our cars is far less than that in other parts of the world. Even more disconcerting is that Americans today are buying primarily low-mileage cars. Now, many folks argue that they buy big, low-mileage cars because they are safer. Well, they are, for you and your passengers. The more metal and mass around you, the safer you are in an accident. But the kinetic energy dissipated when your large, massive automobile collides with someone else's smaller, less massive car is far more dangerous to your unintended victim. Yes, mass may be safer for you, but it's not in the best interest of society. Cars are available which can get 50 and even 60 miles per gallon. There are prototype advanced automobiles that will get over 100 miles per gallon. Unfortunately, their performance in terms of acceleration and other characteristics is not what people have come to expect. And because the price of gasoline is so cheap today, high-efficiency automobiles are just not very popular. Yet. Utah, the Wasatch Front, and particularly the area from roughly Ogden through Provo, is very concerned about growth, about transportation gridlock, and about air quality. The nearly 2 million people now living along that Wasatch corridor will continue to increase dramatically between now and 2002. What if we have one of our ugly inversion periods along the Wasatch Front in February 2002, causing a large number of Olympic visitors to have severe respiratory problems? Although the governor and other politicians are very concerned about Utah's image, you and I live here. We're not coming just for the Olympics or just for a winter vacation. And we're not going to spend much of our time above the inversion layer, escaping that polluted air. So what do we do? Well, the good news is that the Utah Transit Authority, the UTA, is now in the advanced planning stages for a light rail system and for enhanced bus service in the Salt Lake Valley, with links to the University of Utah, to downtown, and to the Salt Lake International Airport, and possibly even the local canyons. These plans, when fully implemented, will help alleviate much of the traffic congestion and gridlock, but they will not eliminate it. Increasing the number of lanes on I-15 will also help, but will not eliminate congestion and even gridlock. So even if you think you will never, ever be coaxed out of your metal box, you won't be able to get anywhere with it unless you can get lots of other folks to leave their cars at home. So you need to do all you can to support rail, bus, and bicycle services so they can ride the light rail or take the bus or bicycle. Otherwise, it is certain that you won't be able to drive your car anywhere. There is no one solution. There are no easy solutions. We need a set of integrated solutions, including staying at home and taking telecourses part of the time. We no longer have a national consciousness about energy conservation and efficient resource utilization. We no longer see public officials speaking out. We no longer see public service ads. We no longer see any national consciousness dealing with energy. We see just the opposite. There are fewer and fewer economical cars being purchased, and more big cars, heavy cars with low gas mileages on the road. We have seen environmental controls being eased, lifted, ostensibly for the health of the economy. Our government, our society, has effectively stuck its head in the sand regarding energy use and energy conservation for the last 10+ years. We are now beginning to pay the price. The price is not being paid by the upper classes or even the upper middle classes. The price is being paid by the lower middle class, the lower class, and the very poor. They are the ones who must operate in a society with inadequate public transportation, polluted air, excess noise, and an intolerance for pedestrians and bicycles. We need to pay the price for improved public transit. We need to accept the challenge of smaller and more efficient private transit. And we need to insist on public officials with some planning and problem-solving skills. We need to get those folks out of their limousines, out of their luxury cars, and into the real world, or simply get them out of office altogether. When you do drive as safely and efficiently as possible. Here are some science-based guidelines to enhance your own driving and to help you encourage your friends, colleagues, and family to do likewise. These guidelines are based on concepts of biology, chemistry, physics, and the environmental sciences. Always be alert. That means minimizing eating and drinking, minimizing cosmetic use, no pets romping around in the car, and no cellular phones or over-involved talking with your passengers. No reading maps or books while driving. Just pull over and eat, have your conversation, read your map, or put on your lipstick. Drive at safe speeds and at safe distances. If you crash into the guy in front of you, it is your fault because you were following too close or driving too fast. No excuses. Anticipate what's going on all around you. Don't only look at the guy in front of you and to each side. Try to look in front of the car in front of you. If you see lights, brake lights, let's say 5 car lengths ahead, that may be significant. Let up on the accelerator. And let up on the accelerator way in advance of the stop sign or stoplight. Every time you apply brakes, you are literally throwing away your car's kinetic energy. People often accelerate to within 2 or 3 car lengths of a stoplight and then abruptly brake. They waste energy by accelerating and then waste even more by the rapid braking. That energy could and should have been saved by simply anticipating a few car lengths earlier that the light was really red. Keep your own car healthy and tuned. Be sure your emission control system is functioning. Your tires are properly inflated. And remember, for most cars, as you go over 50 or 55, much more of your gasoline energy goes to overcoming wind resistance. Driving just 5 miles an hour slower will increase your mileage significantly. Give it a try. Drive as if the price of gas was 3 to 4 times what it is here. Pretend that you're living and driving in Europe or Japan. Put $3 in the bank for every dollar you spend on gas. The final bottom line on the efficiency of a car is simply the total gasoline burned. Your mileage, your total annual gasoline bill. Try to minimize it. There are no easy solutions. The laws of physics, of chemistry, and of biology provide certain limits, certain boundary conditions. If you are a Star Trek fan, then you know the phrase, "But I can't change the laws of physics, Captain." The laws of science are sound. We cannot turn them off. Ignoring those laws through ignorance or through naive, wishful thinking is the same as putting our collective heads in the sand. Someday we'll have to come up for air, and when we do, the air won't be there. But the problems we've ignored for so long will be there, and they'll be much worse and more difficult to solve. It's not only your environment and mine, but those of our children, our grandchildren, and the others yet to come. Protect it for them. Difficult problems are never pleasant. We have to address them head-on, effectively and creatively. And that may well involve less convenience, less privacy, and less independence. Remember, the Chinese symbol for crucial point, G, also represents opportunity. Think creatively. We'll see you on the bus.
I can't walk through a shopping mall without getting depressed at it all. The atmosphere's so unnatural here that it's frightening. Consumers march down the aisles, preteens look for their favorite styles. You know, this money and time could go to far better uses. What if everyone would use their eyes to be aware of the causes of the world's demise? I bet this parking lot would be a lot less full. It takes a lot to shift their attention onto something vital like birth prevention. It takes a nightly news showing color pictures of starving children while we're doing auditions. Crowds eating at the fast food place, not quite knowing that there's hardly space for the styrofoam plates they use to stuff their faces, which will never decompose. We can't erase its traces. So while grandma buys a stroller attachment, another acre falls to development. While idle grandpa sips his drink, another species becomes extinct. It's a shopping mall, a shocking mall. You get an accurate picture of the mall in the shopping mall. You can see how it all got to be this way. Shopping mall, it's a shocking